Hello everyone and welcome to the video lecture series of mobile application development. In our previous session, we talked about that how can we add the fragment by clicking on a button, as well as we have seen that what is the relation between the activity lifecycle and the fragment lifecycle. Now, in today's topic, we are going to talk about the backstacks in fragment. See, you people know about the backstack of the activity. Activity stack is also there. That when you click on any one activity and another activity take the place of the one activity, above the one, the second activity is there, 3 is there, 4 is there. This is a stack. So when you click on a back button, the last inserted activity is gone first, then the next, then the next, then the next. So activity follows stack. We already know this. But what about the fragments and how the backstack in fragment can work and implemented? This thing we are going to see in this lecture. Hi, this is your instructor Janice Shah. So let's begin to understand how the backstack works. See, here I'm taking an example that this particular pen is known as our activity. So when I click on any application, the very first screen that I can able to see, that is our activity. Now, somehow, if I want to add any fragment, then that fragment can be added like this. This is a fragment number 1. Okay, this is activity, then the next is the fragment number 1. Now, on any click of the action, we may found the fragment number 2. Now, again, if I want to add fragment, then we'll get the fragment number 3. So this is activity. On the activity, we have fragment 1, then fragment 2, then fragment 3. So this is how the backstack works. This is the stack of the fragments. So how the backstack works, sir? See students, when you click on a back button, you first move from the fragment number 3 to fragment number 2, like this. Next, fragment number 2 to fragment number 1. Next, fragment number 1 to activity screen. And if you try to click again on the back button, then the home screen will be shown. That means you came out from the application. So this is how your backstack works. You should maintain the backstack to maintain the hierarchy of the fragments as well and to get a better user interface for the output. If you are aware about the WhatsApp application, we usually found the chat listing as a first screen. When you click on the chat, students, you found the chat description, we can say, whatever the chat you have done with your colleague or friend, that you can see over there. Now, you may have found a back button over this WhatsApp application. So when you click on the back button, students, you just redirect to the chat fragment again. Fine. When you again click on the back button, the activity gets closed. So this is how the backstack works. Now, how we can implement the backstack? So let me show you. Students, before that I am going to show you what is about the today's program or how we are going to understand the process of the backstack. Fine. So what we are going to do over here? First, students, you need to create the 3 different fragments. Okay. So first we are going to create the 3 fragments, that means 3 layout XML file and 3 Java file to handle that fragments. Now, second one, need to create a layout with the proper gravity and the text, then make a layout in XML file. So which type of layout we are going to make? We are going to make a layout which contains one button over there. That means we have already done this previous session, right? We had a add fragment button. Fine. Under the button, students, we have our fragment layouts. So how it works or what we are going to build in this particular live practical session. So first one is a home screen. Now, when you try to click on the application, then you may found first this type of screen. That means this is the activity. Above the activity, we get the fragment backstack count is equal to 0. It's a text view. See, I am going to tell you each and every view components so we can make program accordingly. What we have? We have one activity with us. On the above the activity, we have one text view and under it we have one button. This button contains a text that is known as add fragment. Now, user try to click on this add fragment button, the backstack count will incremented and it goes as 1. When user again try to click on the add fragment button, the above the one, the second fragment will appear. This is a fragment number 2 and the count becomes 2. Now, when the user click again on the add fragment, students, it will show as fragment number 3 and backstack count 3. Fine. Now, so this is how, students, we are going to add the backstacks. Now, again when user try to click on the add fragment button, again number 1 fragment is appear on above 3. See, I have created only 3 fragments. So what I put a condition over that, if the first time the number 1 fragment will appear, second time number 2, third time number 3. Now when again student try to click on the button, I'm just repeating the number 1. Okay, so number 1 is appended over there above the fragment number 3. Again click, number 1 is again appended over there. That means backstack count is now 6. And what we have? 1, 1, 3, 2, 1. Fine. So when you user try to click on the back button from the 1, okay. When you try to click on the back button, backstack count decremented. So from the 3 becomes 4 and 4 to becomes 3 again. We found the 3. Now, next, when you click on the back button, we again found the 2. Fragment count is, backstack count is 2. We found 1, backstack count is 1. Click on the back, backstack count is 0. Now, you are on activity screen again. When user click on back button again, then he will be redirected to the home screen. If you do not use backstack, what happens? On whatever the fragment you are, when you click on a back button, you will directly move towards the home screen. Okay, we'll see this during the practicals. So, how we are going to implement this? See, this is my first fragment sample 1. To make a 1, 2, 3 text, what I did, I just take a text view over there. Android gravity is center, text size is 80 sp, and gravity is center vertical and horizontal for the layout gravity. I give such type of gravity over here. If you are going to do the program, just follow these steps. Okay. First, we are going to make the 3 different fragments. I am going to create 3 different fragments: sample number 1, sample 2, sample 3. So it contains such type of these things. First, gravity center, then text size, then the level gravity, and remember here the text is 1. And the orientation of the fragment is vertical. Fine. Now, when we talk about the next one, I have did the same thing over here. Give the center gravity, text size, just change the Android text from 1 to 2, and the color of this fragment is also different. That is FRG2 color. Fine. Now, when we talk about the fragment number 3 XML, same style, no much changes, only the layout is linear is also there in the previous 2 files. Then, the layout gravity is the center, text is 3. So, here I am giving the height is the wrap content. That means whatever the text size is there, the places occupy the space according to the text sizes. Now, what we need to make next? Next, students, we are going to make a layout over there in the XML file. What we have? We have one text view over there that contains backstack count. Remember, next, second, we have the button, and third, we have to appear the fragment in the frame layout. So what we need to make over here? We need to write down 3 different things. One is text view, second one is button, third one is frame layout. So here I have written same. See, this is my text view that contains text size, ID. Do not forget to give ID to the text view and the button itself. Why? It is very much necessary, because whenever you try to get some values from the view component, or try to set value to the view component, or try to use that view component or apply to the action over there, you need to give ID. Fine. Without ID, we cannot identify all the text views. Clear? So now, here what we need to give, we just need to give the ID to the Android component, and the text count is just blank. I didn't write anything else. Then here Android text is the button. Button ID is button add frg, that is ID of a button, and the text is over that add fragment. The rest of the part of the activity main XML, see, this is text view, this is button, and now the frame layout is there. Do not forget to give ID to the frame layout, that is fragment underscore container. Fine. because we are going to show our fragment over here. Whenever you try to click on the fragment manager by using fragment transaction, add what to add, where to add, we first need to set the layout, right? r.id.what id fragment container comma object of the fragment. Okay, if you do not know how to add a fragment dynamically, how to add a fragment on the click of a button, do not forget to watch my previous videos. I have already explained each and everything. Fine, so just check out the previous videos. Now let's move further. For the next screen, students, when we talk about the main activity.java, here we have the main activity extends app compatibility. Next, I am just going to show some tags over there. Okay, use two tag. If you want to show logs, then you can use this tags. Otherwise, it's absolutely fine. Do not worry about it. Here I'm taking a button, then the text view. Why? We need to take a button identity from the button fragment over to here Java file. Same like that, the text view from the over to this Java file. As well as I have just declaring fragment manager object and the fragment transaction object over here. See, these are not initialization. This is just a declaration. Okay. Now, next. Main activity contains, see, this is a main thing that you need to understand all about. That is a fragment manager should be initialized over here because we need to get the backstack count, that how many fragments are there in a backstack. See, first when your activity screen launch, there is no backstack count. That means it should be 0. That's why we need to show, or we need to call the method at the very first beginning. That's why the method is fragment manager dot add on backstack change listener, and the method is on backstack change. What you need to do, whenever the backstack value is changed, you just need to set text. See the text view count. When I'm getting text view count, see, first the button fragment is equal to find view by id button add frg. Then I'm taking another text view count variable and set with the layout. Then fragment manager object is there. Now first setting the text view count. See, like this, text view count set text is equal to fragment count in backstack is fragment manager dot get backstack entry count. Students, this dot get backstack entry count method gives you the exact count of the fragments in a backstack. In initial position there is no count, that means it should be 0. So when you try to launch your application, it will show you 0. Correct? Now what about the next one? Next, whenever the backstack will change, it should refresh the count of the backstack. That's why we are going to set the text again in the text view count. And listen, to set the text in the text view count, students, I have already given the id to the text view area. So students, to set the text to the text view count, we need to give id to that particular text view. That's why in the main activity.xml, what I did, I just gave the id. See here, in the main activity.xml, give id to the text view text count. Fine, that's why we can access it over here like this, find view by id r.id.text count. Now we can refer this text view count at the text view of activity main. Now whenever the user try to change, or whenever the backstack value is changed, this method is called and set the backstack entry count again. So now whenever the backstack value is changed, this method is automatically called and the counter is incremented by itself. We are not going to do any count plus plus or anything else. Fine. Now let's see what's next. See, this is a button. That means whenever try to click on the add, what happens? We have already seen this. Like you just need to set on click listener over the button and call add fragment method. Now, see, this is a main activity.java file. Like protected void add fragment method is there. What I'm going to do is, see, I need to set a different fragments. Just forget this code. Just forget this code. Okay, just imagine we have only this below part. How to write down the add fragment? First you need to write down the transaction manager begin transaction, then create the fragment transaction dot add r.id container, that means at the layout and which position you want to add your fragment, and then on comma, then you need to write down the fragment object. But here what happens, students, the fragment object is not there because we have different types of fragment, 1, 2, 3. Which object we need to choose, that is a little bit of confusion. So what is going to be happen over here, if the backstack entry count is 0, that means there are no fragment in the backstack, then we need to show fragment number 1. If the backstack entry count is 1, then we need to show fragment number 2. If the backstack entry count is 2, then we need to show fragment number 3. But what else if there is no backstack entry count more than 3? Okay, at the time we just need to append the backstack 1 again. Fine. So in the default case, I'm going to take a switch and make an object of a fragment. See the fragment. Then under the switch case, I'm going to write down like fragment manager dot get backstack entry count. So this is our main variable. If the backstack entry count is 0, then it goes into case number 0. And we are initializing the fragment as like this. Fragment is equal to new sample fragment 1 and break. That means it contains the object of 1. Directly move towards over here and the sample 1 is created. Fine. Now next, fragment number 2, how it will be created, like case number 1. So fragment sample 2 and break. Case number 2, if it is case number 2, that means 2 fragments are already added into backstack. Then what happens? We just need to add fragment number 3. And what happens if all 3 created? Then we are just appending, repeating the fragment number 1 again and again. That means backstack count is incremented. So do not worry about it. Backstack count is incremented. How? Because in the default case we said we call the object of the fragment 1. So it is added. Now to add the fragment to the backstack, you just need to call this method like fragment transaction.add to backstack in the bracket null. Okay, and last, do not forget to commit. So how this works? Let me show you with the usage of practical. So let's see the live practical of this add fragment and backstack methods. Student, this is what I have right now with me. This is I just opened up my project. So what I did, let me just explain. First, I just created 3 different fragments. See here, the orientation is vertical, gravity is center, and the color is also changed. Now, I have just created one text view over there. Another text view, text is 1. Gravity, layout gravity is center, vertical and horizontal. The text size is 80, gravity is center. Layout width and height is match parent and wrap content respectively. Now what about the fragment 2? I just copied the same code in the fragment 2, but just change the text to okay. And now the color of the fragment 2 is little bit different. The fragment sample number 3, color is totally different and the text is 3. That means I have just created 3 different fragments here. Now for the same fragments, already we have the Java files for the sample 1, 2 and 3. This is sample fragment number 1, sample fragment number 2 Java file, and sample fragment number 3 Java file. It contains not much thing, only the onCreate view is there. I'm not going to change any code over there. Okay. So what is our main part is activity main.xml. So it's again the linear layout for the activity main. Orientation is vertical. Change the background color so we can identify that this is the activity. Then here it is. See, first I just created a text view. This text view contains the ID's text count. That means this is the text view that contains your backstack count is dash 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 whatever we have. Next button we have. Okay, it's the same button, same as the previous practical videos where we just click on the add button and fragment is created. So ID is the same, button add fragment. And the frame layout, we need to take a frame layout because in this particular frame layout we are going to show a fragment. Fine. So ID for the frame layout is fragment container. Okay, now let's move towards the main activity file. So here what we are just going to do, see students. First I just created activity main tag. Okay, if I not want to make a tag, then it's also fine. Then I just create a button private. Okay, then the private text view over there. Variable name is button add fragment. Text view name is text view count. Then create a fragment manager object and fragment transaction object. See, the fragment manager object is initialized over here during the onCreate method. Fragment transaction should be initialized every time whenever you try to create a fragment. Okay, that's why I didn't write that begin transaction in this on create. I have created a separate add fragment method. Under that, I'm just going to write down the begin transaction method. Okay. So here super dot on create set content view. Next button add fragment, find view by id. Our id is button add fragment. Then text view, our id is text count. Then created a fragment manager by calling the get support fragment manager method. Next students, the text view count. See, the text view count is set text fragment count in backstack. Okay, so here let me show the whole content, and we are just going to set the text. Okay, so in another text view, whenever this method is called, first is just going to call the get backstack entry count, fetch it and show it to you as 0. Now, this is the fragment manager. Whenever the backstack is changed, same as the button on click listener, here the backstack on change listener, that where we need to call this on backstack changed method. And under it, we just need to write down, see, the set text fragment count under the backstack is this. Now, for the button and fragment set on click listener, we just need to call our method. What is our method? Our method is add fragment. Fine. So I'm just calling the add fragment. What about the rest one? So this is the previous same program. So we just need to focus over here under the add fragment method. Okay. So what we did in the beginning, students, see, this is our first code. What we are going to do? We are just going to first create a fragment transaction, fragment manager by calling the get support fragment manager method. Then begin transaction, add transaction into the container and pass the fragment object. But right now we are not sure that which type of fragment we are going to call. That's why I am creating a fragment object by calling the fragment. And then under the switch case, we are going to show that if the get backstack entry count is 0, then we just need to call the object of fragment 1, else 2, else 3, else 4. That means we are going to set the fragment at a runtime. That's why students it is known as dynamic fragment. Fine. Now, do not forget to write down the fragment transaction dot add stack backstack null method. Now, what happens if I'm removing this? Let me show you this first. If you are not going to do add backstack, then what happens? Let me show you. Just wait for a while. I'm just going to remove my camera and start my application run. Okay, just wait. So first, let me just try to run this application and show you. See, right now I have just commented the section of the add backstack. Okay. So finally, students, the application is starts to run. So here it is. See, this is the fragment count in backstack is 0, just because at the beginning, students, we do not have the particular fragment count. Now, when I click on add fragment button, the backstack is changed or not. Let me show you. See, it appears 1. Okay, now it's again appears 1. I'm clicking again and again, still it appears 1 only. Why? Because I did not added the into the backstack. That's why the backstack entry count is 0 itself. Okay, so when I click on a back button, students, see, application is closed. What happens? See, this is my program name is fragment with backstack. This is the fragment with backstack. Again, let me show you. When I click on the add fragment button, when I click on the back, it will just close whole application. It should be into the backstack. So how to do that? Let me just uncomment this code and run the application again. So just wait for a while. The application will launch again. And now the application, the fragments are stored in the backstack, and let me show you how the backstack works. Okay, see, the application will be terminated. So here it is. Now wait for a while. The application will install and then it will run. So here it is, friends. You can see the screen, the very first screen. The backstack count is 0. Start. Students, this is again I'm just click on the add fragment button. Then what happens? See, right now my backstack, yeah, I have already each and every fragment into backstack. Okay, when I click on add fragment button, the backstack change method is called, as well as this fragment is added. See, backstack becomes 1. and I again click on, now the backstack count is 1. So now when I click on the add fragment button, the backstack stack is changed and it is 1. That's why it's called 2. See, backstack count is 2. These two methods are different. Adding in a backstack, that is called by the add fragment method, and the number of backstack is changed due to the this. See, this is a method. This is a method. Where is it? See, this is a method. On backstack change listener, and we are setting the fragment count. Okay. So now when I click on that fragment back again, so the case number 2, that frag becomes 3. Now see, the backstack count is 3. Okay. So it is not goes into case 0, 1 or 2. What happens with the backstack count? See, when I again click on the fragment button, it should be called the default. In the default, we have the fragment sample 1. That's why when I click on that fragment, it should show fragment sample 1. Here it is. Now click me on the back button. Okay. See, it is not go out from the whole application. It will show the fragment 3, 2, 1, 0. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 5, 6. See, 1 is continuously added on the 1 upon again into stack. And the backstack count is now 9. And click on the back button, it will just removing from the stack. Now, the stack number is 3, 2, 1. And now when I click on again on the back button, my activity gets closed. So this is how, students, your backstack works. Now, in the next session, students, we talk about that how can we remove and replace the fragments. The code remains same. I'm just going to change 2 or 3 lines from during the remove and replace of the fragments. Okay. So, still if you have any doubt, then please feel free to ask me. Thank you so much.